Hi, it's Zena, Warthog Princess, and this video is not about shopping. It's not Vera or Jujubee or Lug or anything fun like that. This is a video about diabetes. November is National Diabetes Awareness Month, and so it's a perfect time to share some information and try to help make all of us wiser for having had this little chat. So the first thing is, what does the awareness ribbon look like? Because people always ask that, right? For whatever the cause is, there is a ribbon nowadays. So up until 2006, the ribbon was a gray ribbon and often had just a little drop of blood. It might look like this, and it's just diabetes. And I guess the blood is blood sugar, so you kind of knew. But in 2006, the United Nations adopted a blue circle, just a plain blue circle. So you may see that in combination with the gray ribbon or whatnot. More commonly now, you might see a blue and gray ribbon, and it may have words, it may not. It might say type 1 or type 2, etc. But usually blue, gray, with or without a drop of blood. So that's what it looks like. But this year's focus for National Institutes of Health is focusing on youth, caring for youth with diabetes, and it could be type 1 or type 2. We'll talk more about that. But there's probably around 193,000 people under 20 years of age that have diabetes. So that's a lot of young folks dealing with this horrible condition. I say horrible just because the complications can be devastating, but it can be managed, and it's just an expensive condition to take care of. So I'm looking over here to glance at some numbers, but it says on the website 30.3 million Americans, which is 9.4% of the US population, have diabetes. A quarter of those people do not even know they have it, which is around 7.2 million people just walking around with diabetes, probably doing some irreversible damage to their bodies because they just don't even know that they have it. A quarter of the people who do have it are more than 65 years of age, so that is definitely a risk factor as well. In addition, another 84 million people have what they call pre-diabetes, which means that you have some insulin resistance and your body is working its way towards diabetes potentially. So the good news is pre-diabetes is totally reversible. And once you have diabetes, though, that's permanent. So diabetes is not a death sentence. It can be managed. You can mitigate and minimize the risks, but it is a life sentence, meaning it will change your life. It changes how you eat and how you should exercise, your lifestyle. It complicates what medications you can take, what happens if you get hurt or sick or injured or anything. So a lot of different things that it affects. But anyway, 9 out of 10 people that have prediabetes don't know they have that either. So that's important to get tested. So what are the risk factors for getting diabetes? 1 is family history. 2 is genetics. So separate from your actual family, whether they have it or don't have it in your immediate family and predecessors. Maybe certain races. And I looked at the list, and honestly, it's like, well, if you're human, you're at risk. But there are some races that have higher risk, like Pacific Islanders and some of that. Your sex has something to do with it, and your lifestyle, your weight, your diet, your activity level, things like that. So specifically breaking that down, if you're overweight or obese, you're at higher risk. If you're more than 45 years old, if you have high blood pressure, low HDL, which is your good cholesterol, or high triglycerides, that puts you at greater risk. If you have a history of gestational diabetes, or if you had a baby more than 9 pounds at birth, or if you're just inactive in general, and or if you have polycystic ovarian syndrome. So a lot of risk factors. What does it all mean, and what is diabetes? So I took some notes here on my little board. Let me just flip it around. So diabetes, in simple terms, just means your blood sugar is too high. The body doesn't like that. It's a fine balance. The body, especially the brain, uses sugar for energy, but too much of it in the wrong places is a bad thing. It will damage your eyes, your kidney, your heart, your cardiovascular system. You get nerve complications. You can get bad circulation issues, and then you start getting amputations and a lot of complications that you just don't want to mess with. I mean, you need your eyes and your feet and your heart. Those are key elements to your body, right? So you definitely want to pay attention to that. So what's the difference between type 1 and type 2? Type 1 basically is that your body's not producing insulin, which is produced in the pancreas. So either your pancreas has failed or something else is going on that's preventing it. Oftentimes, cystic fibrosis also has diabetes. It's a different classification of it. But yeah, type 1. Type 1 most often is young adults or children diagnosed with it. You could be born with it, actually, but usually it's diagnosed in childhood or early adolescence. Type 2 can also be children, but type 2 is your body maybe is making insulin, but it's either not making enough and or your body is resistant to utilizing that insulin effectively. And so the result is the same. You get too high a blood sugar and that causes all these other problems. So what can you do about it? One is you should get checked periodically. You can do random blood sugar checks. They just prick your finger and do a drop of blood. If you're diabetic, you have to do that anyways regularly before you eat, before you exercise, after you eat, after you exercise, while you're fasting, before you go to bed. I mean, depending on your severity of your disease will determine how you need to do that and what goals you're looking for. But other than that, diet and exercise is important. So very, very manageable oftentimes just by changing your diet and exercise. Some others, they're like the next stage up, if you will, you have to take medications. By the way, I did not know this until just recently. If your sugars are high, even without a history of cholesterol issues, your cholesterol goes up as well. So oftentimes you'll take metformin and a statin as well. It's pretty normal. And then you may also have an ACE inhibitor or something else for protective measures for your cardiovascular system. So like I said, it complicates everything. It changes everything. And other ways you can manage it, obviously just losing the weight. So why am I talking about all of this? Okay, one, because awareness is important. I'm pre-med minded, medically minded. So sharing this kind of information is very key. But personally, I do have a very, very strong family history, and I've been dreading this condition my whole life, realizing that it was a very real possibility. And about a year and a half ago, I got diagnosed with prediabetes. So I was on it. I was proactive. I was ahead of it. I tried to do some things to take care of it. And instead, on August 10th, I started the keto diet that I'm doing, a very, very strict clinical weight loss program managed by a doctor. And it's working. Yay. I'm not going to say how much I've lost because that would say how much I weighed, but a lot and a long way to go, but definitely finally going in the right direction. But less than a month later, on August 27th, I took an oral glucose tolerance test and failed. So I officially have type 2 diabetes, and it has been an emotional roller coaster. I won't dive into it too much because it is very emotional for me, because there's just a lot of things tied into it. You think, well, I can never, ever, ever have certain things again. And I love bread. I love carbs. I'm not a sugar person, but anyways, the point is it can be very depressing and overwhelming and very, very stressful, especially in the initial stages of figuring it all out and getting information, especially during COVID where you can't go to your in-person classes and learn about it. Or, so many things. It's just, it's a lot. And so I'm very, very aware right now. And so it just so happens that this awareness month is very personal to me. So here I am sharing that way more than I probably should share of my own personal life, but it's real and it happens, and you may have it, you may be on your way to it, but it's not the end of the world. Just know that there is always hope, and there are a lot of things you can do. So that's the bad news. I call it the big D, and it just hangs over everything that you do from here forward. So I got the big D, but even though you either are diabetic or not, you have diabetes or you don't. However, there are definitely a spectrum of intensities or severities of it. And I was just at the very, very front end of it, not only early on, but just low end. So I had gotten one A1C in the diabetic range, and it was at 7.5. It was kind of out of the blue. It just jumped way up all of a sudden. And I started the diet just prior to that, so less than a month, but now I just had my A1C rechecked and it is 5.5, which is normal. So, yay, but that doesn't mean I don't have diabetes. It just means that I'm in remission. So, unfortunately, it's still with me. But what is A1C? A1C is a measurement of your average blood sugar for about 3 months. So instead of doing a prick every day and calculating all of that, it takes the entirety of your blood sugars and averages them. It works. I don't know the magic of it, but it's a way to monitor your blood sugar status. So if you're going to your primary care, just have them do an A1C if you're at risk or you think you might be, or you're having symptoms of diabetes, which might be excessive urination and urgency. You might be having some incontinence with it, even a little bit. You will have fatigue and just energy issues, and you might have GI effects. You might be getting wonky vision, and I don't mean just blurry, but wonky is just the best way to describe it. It's inconsistent. It's sort of kind of just changing all of a sudden. Some things like that. And my body is apparently very sensitive because I did have some of those symptoms myself, and so it was a clue that something was going on. But as soon as I started the diet, things changed and got right back to normal. So that's all very good news. But the A1C numbers, normal is 5.7 or less than 5.7. So 5.6 and below is normal. 5.7 to 6.4 is pre-diabetes range. And like I said, that just means that you're starting to get some insulin resistance. Skinny people have diabetes too, by the way. So it's not a fat person's disease. It's not a slovenly people disease or lazy people disease. Yes, those certain lifestyle characteristics can lead you in a higher risk, but there's much more to it. Much more. I mean, I was healthy, athletic, and active and fit and normal weight most of my life. And just end game in the last few years, gained a bunch of weight. So I'm just saying, I'm not making any excuses. I contributed to my own demise in that regard, especially because I was already at a higher risk. But I'm aging up. I'm 48, going on 49 next month. So I'm definitely in the heart of the envelope for multiple risk factors, the strongest of which is family history, which my whole family has it. So very, very strong factor that may or may not be something you can overcome. Just know that, again, it's not the end of the world. So not to ramble on about it, but if you have 6.5 or higher on your A1C, that's diabetic range. So I did pop in at 7.5, but then I popped right back out to normal range, skipped right back through pre-diabetic into normal range at 5.5. So there you go. It can be done, and I hope to stay there forever, honestly, but for as long as possible, certainly, because the more that you can manage your blood sugars and keep them within the normal range, the better off you're going to be in the long run. So like life goal, health-wise, health and wellness is stay as healthy as you can for as long as you can and then die suddenly, because, you know, this the long, slow, painful decline is not something anybody wants, right? You want to just stay healthy. So that's all I have to say about all of that. If you have any questions at all, personally, professionally, I am not a medical professional. I'm not exactly a layman either, but I'm in the thick of a voyage of discovery on this topic. So by any means, you know, I'm an open book, ask away. But just feel free to leave a remark or comment, anything you might have to add to the discussion as well. That would be great. And the final thing is just a summary for managing it. Just think of your ABCs. You want your A1C checked every 3 months if you're at high risk or if you have it for sure. Minimum twice a year if you're in that zone. Most will say the goal is to be less than 7 if you have diabetes. But like I said, less than 5.7 keeps you in the normal range and out of the danger zone. Your blood pressure goal, if you have diabetes, 140/90 or as directed. And all of these are as directed. Everything is tailored to the individual. These are just some general guidelines. C is cholesterol. You want to keep your blood sugars within limits to keep your cholesterol within limits. And if you're at risk, if you have high cholesterol, you can change your diet. That might be able to affect that. You might have to take a statin with or without diabetes to maintain good cholesterol. And that's important for stroke risk anyway. So definitely get your physicals, get your labs, get your stuff done, take care of yourself preventatively so you don't have to do it reactively. And the last thing, ABCs, the S is stop smoking. So if you're a smoker, that does put you at a significantly higher risk of a great many things, including diabetes, and certainly will complicate things if you have diabetes already. So anyway, ABCs and 1, 2, 3s. So get active, focus on your happiness as well as your wellness, and keep it real. Take care. Wash your hands. Bye for now.